621 here, Big 550 KTRS. Let's go to Moscow and check in with Kira Rada, who is got the latest with Vladimir Putin. Good morning, Kira. Welcome to Big 550 KTRS here in St. Louis.
Good morning. How are you?
What is Putin now saying when it comes to the Ukraine?
Well, look, I mean, just yesterday he actually had some very interesting remarks that seemed to turn his position around. You know, for the longest time he's been opposed to this idea of Ukraine holding an election, presidential election, in a few weeks, and he's been believed to be behind these separatists that have been taking over towns and buildings in the east. But yesterday he suggested, urged those separatists to put off plans to hold an independence referendum this weekend, and he appeared to turn his position around on the election as well, saying that would in fact be a step in the right direction. So he didn't exactly explain those moves, but it was very intriguing, and it set off a whole set of speculation about why he might want to do that.
He also said that he is pulling the troops back from the border. Is he actually doing that?
Well, he claims that he is, and the Pentagon very quickly, within about a half hour, had a response saying that they've seen absolutely no evidence to suggest that he had it. You know, Putin, when he said this, he challenged the West and the U.S. and everybody to say, look, you can use your spy satellites to confirm this. And the Pentagon and the White House both say that they've seen absolutely no evidence of it. Just today, the Defense Ministry hit back against the Pentagon and NATO, saying that there is evidence that they have done this. So, you know, it's turning into a he said, she said at this point. But frankly, the Russians have shown quite a bit of willingness to bend the truth when it suits their needs in this case. So it's very hard to believe them.
What is Putin thinking? What's the thought process as to this latest situation? What is he trying to accomplish?
You know, it's very difficult to get inside his head on this here because he doesn't really explain his actions very much, but you can try to game it out a little bit here. You know, from his perspective, he lost an ally in Kiev and he doesn't trust the government that's there right now. He can take any number of ways to get to it, but the conclusion or the consensus seems to be that he'd like to, at the very least, destabilize Ukraine to ensure that there is no strong power along his border there. He's always considered Ukraine to be a sort of buffer zone for him between Russia and the West, and he was very wary of this pro-Western government there. I'll draw your attention, very interesting today, there was a massive military drill that the Russians carried out. Putin personally oversaw this. Apparently, it was an exercise to defend against a foreign nuclear attack, and that's not something you see every day. The Russians say it was long planned, but of course, with all this tension between Russia and the West over Ukraine, the timing can't be ignored.
Is there any thought that the sanctions might be starting to take effect, and some of the billionaires are calling him saying, hey, you know what, do what you want, but you're messing up my money stream, so watch yourself?
You know, it's really interesting. I think that's one of the things, especially if we don't see Russian troops going across the border. I'm sure that the Obama administration will take as much credit as it can for imposing those sanctions, and they'll claim that they turned him back at the border. You know, it's very hard, again, to get inside and say definitively that that's what's happening. But, you know, when these sanctions get announced, you always have these people who are on the list put this brave face forward and say that, you know, well, this doesn't affect me so much. But the fact of the matter is that it really does. You know, even if they don't necessarily have assets overseas, it really freezes them out of the international system, banking system, and they are pretty strong measures. So very hard to say definitively if that's had an effect or not, but certainly very interesting the fact that the Kremlin is turning around right now.
All right. We said that he said he's going to pull the troops back. We'll wait to see if he actually does that. He also said, that he wants to postpone this vote for Sunday. Are they going to postpone that vote for Sunday?
Well, just today there was a meeting of the Council of People in the East there, and they say that they're going to go ahead with their plans for that referendum. Now, it's yesterday when people on the ground were talking to some of these separatists, there was sort of a deflated atmosphere there. People who really thought the Russian cavalry was coming to get them and then back them up. And I think by this point it seems that that's not going to be the case. This could be seen maybe one of two ways. One of either a test of whether or not Putin really did have influence over those people or not, or whether he can say the right right thing and continue doing the wrong thing behind everybody's back. So very hard to say exactly why that's happening right now. But to answer your question, they have decided that they will go ahead and hold that vote on Sunday.
What's the next step for Putin, President Obama, America, and everybody else? Is it a wait-and-see mode now?
I think we're definitely in a wait-and-see mode right now. I think the next thing will be, if either side is going to produce any evidence to back up their claims that Russian troops have backed off the border there. The Obama administration has been putting out sort of quiet sanctions, just yesterday cutting off some trade preferences for Russian goods. But the Obama administration had warned that their next big round of sanctions would only come if Russian troops cross the border. If, in fact, they're pulling them back, that would seem to pull us back from that brink at least. But the next thing to see is whether or not this Ukrainian military offensive continues. The Russians are demanding that it halt, and whether or not this destabilizes the country anymore to the point where it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to hold that election later this month.
What about Europe? What about Germany? What are they saying about this latest development?
Well, look, they've been very, very, I would say they've been wavering. The Germans especially have a huge trade relationship. They get a lot of their oil, like much of Europe does, or excuse me, their gas, their energy from Russia. And so they've been very wary about sanctions that could come back and hit them, too. I mean, you remember that Europe is barely recovering from the massive recession as well. And then much of the continent is suffering from massive unemployment. So they're very wary of anything that would hurt their economies. Right now, I think they're sort of waiting and seeing. They're on board for tougher measures if Russians cross the border, but I don't think it'll be at the same scale that the Americans are.
Interesting developments in the Ukraine and in the region. Russian President Vladimir Putin has second thoughts and said that he's turning the troops away from the border. Kirit Rada, ABC News correspondent, live in Moscow. Thanks for the update. Be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
628 here, Big 550, KTR.